Amelia Turner had always loved writing letters. In an age where text messages and emails dominated, she found a deep, almost romantic satisfaction in the sweep of a pen across paper. Every word felt alive, permanent, as if ink could hold emotions far better than pixels on a screen. That was why, when she discovered the faded envelope inside her grandmother's cedar chest, her heart skipped. The envelope was sealed, brittle with age, and her grandmother's name, Eleanor, was written on the front in bold, passionate strokes. What caught Amelia's attention most was the trembling script at the corner. "Do not open until you are ready to face the truth." She traced the words with her fingertip, chilled by the sense of secrecy that clung to the paper. The chest had been buried in the attic for decades, filled mostly with yellowed quilts and old photographs. But this letter was different. It seemed to pulse with a hidden life. She wondered why her grandmother had kept it but never mentioned it. Eleanor had been strong-willed, a woman of quiet authority who rarely spoke about her past. If she had hidden this letter so carefully, it must have contained something extraordinary, maybe even dangerous. Amelia sat cross-legged on the floor, the envelope balanced in her lap, debating whether to break the seal. The temptation grew unbearable. With a slow breath, she slid her finger under the fragile flap and gently tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of cream-colored stationery, the ink slightly faded but legible. The first words froze her breath. "My dearest Eleanor, I must confess something that has weighed on me for years. This letter may destroy your trust in me forever, but I can no longer carry the weight of silence." Amelia's pulse quickened. It was a love letter, but also a confession. She leaned closer, hungry for every word, feeling as though she had stumbled into a secret that was never meant for her eyes. The letter went on in a trembling hand. "The night of the harvest dance, when the lanterns burned low and the stars seemed to shiver, something happened that changed everything. I have hidden it from you, hidden it from everyone. I was not where I claimed to be." Amelia paused, glancing at the attic door as if someone might be listening. The words radiated guilt and longing, and she could almost hear the quiver of the writer's voice. Who had written this? A lover her grandmother had never spoken of? A betrayal that had never surfaced? She could feel the walls of the attic tightening around her. She turned the paper over, but there was no signature. Just the initials, J.H. Amelia frowned, racking her mind. Who was J.H.? She had heard stories of her grandmother's youth. Farmers, dances, ration lines during the war, but no one with those initials had ever been mentioned. Her grandmother had passed 5 years ago, taking many secrets with her to the grave. Now, this letter felt like a bridge into that hidden world. Determined to uncover the truth, Amelia tucked the letter back into its envelope and pressed it against her chest. Whatever this confession was, she was not going to leave it buried in the attic. Emma sat on the porch that evening, the letter spread across her lap. The setting sun cast an amber glow over the ink, and she reread the words for the 100th time. "I confess what I should have spoken long ago. My heart was never free. It belonged to you." The sentence both thrilled and unnerved her. Could it be James who wrote this? Her mind churned, weighing years of friendship and carefully buried feelings. If it wasn't James, then who? And why hide a confession in a love letter left unsigned? The handwriting tugged at her memory. It wasn't sloppy, nor overly formal. Each curve carried a deliberateness. She fetched her old notebook from college, where James had once scribbled notes in the margins. She laid the notebook beside the letter and compared. Similar slants, similar loops on the Y. Her pulse quickened. Was this proof? Yet a part of her resisted. If James had harbored such feelings, why now? Why through anonymity? She pressed her palm over the page as if the paper might yield secrets under her touch. The letter had been tucked into the pocket of a second-hand book she bought from the dusty corner of a local bookstore. That discovery added another puzzle piece. Had James deliberately placed it there, knowing she frequented the shop? Or had fate, in its mischievous way, delivered someone else's heart into her hands? She considered returning to the store, asking questions, but feared her curiosity might betray emotions she wasn't ready to expose. Instead, she folded the letter gently, slid it back into its envelope, and placed it beneath her pillow. Sleep eluded her that night. Dreams, when they did come, swirled with whispered voices and shadowy figures holding pens. She awoke at dawn with her chest tight and mind restless. She decided she would face James that day. They had known each other since childhood. He would see through any act of pretense. But what if she asked and he denied? Worse, what if he laughed? She dressed carefully, pulling on her favorite navy sweater, the one James once said matched her eyes. She wanted confidence, even if her heart quaked. James was in his garden when Emma arrived, crouched among tomato plants, sleeves rolled up. He looked up and smiled, a smear of dirt across his cheek. That smile disarmed her like always. She hesitated, the letter weighing heavy in her handbag. "Morning," she said, her voice catching. "Morning, he replied, standing. "You look like you've got something on your mind." His perceptiveness startled her. She almost blurted out everything, but she held back, gauging him. Instead, she asked about his plants, circling around her secret as if afraid of setting it aflame. They shared tea on his porch the way they often did. Conversation meandered to safe topics, the weather, town gossip, an upcoming festival. Yet Emma's mind lingered on the hidden note. Every pause in their exchange felt like an opening, yet she couldn't bring herself to leap. When James reached for the sugar, his fingers brushed hers briefly. It was a small touch, ordinary even, but her skin tingled with awareness. If he was the author, perhaps he was waiting for her to acknowledge it first. She left his house more confused than when she'd arrived. Back home, she unfolded the letter once again. The second paragraph drew her eye. "The years have been heavy with silence. I feared truth might break what we had, yet silence has broken me more." Emma read it aloud softly, her voice trembling. It sounded like James, didn't it? Who else shared her history so deeply? Yet doubt clawed at her. Maybe she was projecting her desires. Maybe the letter wasn't meant for her at all, and she was clinging to a fantasy. Her chest ached with the uncertainty. The following weekend, the town held its annual lantern festival. Streets filled with vendors, laughter, and the glow of paper lanterns rising into the dusk. Emma attended, letter tucked secretly in her purse. She hoped for a sign, some clue. James was there too, standing by a food stall, the light flickering in his eyes. When he spotted her, his face lit. "Come join me," he called. She did, and for a while, they wandered together, laughing at street performers and sharing sweet pastries. Still, the unspoken words between them hovered like lanterns waiting to rise. As night deepened, Emma drifted toward the riverbank where lanterns were released into the sky. She held one in her hands, pen provided to write a wish upon its paper. She hesitated, then scrawled, "To know the truth of a heart, even if it breaks mine." She released it, watching it float upward, glowing among countless others. James appeared beside her, silently letting his own lantern go. Their shoulders brushed, and for a fleeting second, Emma thought he might speak. But he remained quiet, his gaze lost to the heavens. Emma returned home restless again. The mystery consumed her. She resolved to investigate. The next morning, she went back to the bookstore. The elderly owner, Mrs. Carter, greeted her warmly. Emma described the letter, leaving out its exact words, and asked if she knew its origin. Mrs. Carter tapped her chin. "I sort through so many donated books. Could have come from anyone in town or beyond." Her answer deflated Emma, yet she noticed Mrs. Carter's eyes lingered thoughtfully, as if recalling something. Before Emma could press, another customer entered, pulling Mrs. Carter away. That night, Emma sat with her journal and began copying the letter word for word. If she couldn't uncover the writer, she could at least study the confession. Each line felt heavier as she transcribed it, as if by writing, she inherited part of the burden. When she reached the closing, "If you find this, know it was always you." Her hand shook. She closed her journal and whispered into the stillness, "If only you would just tell me who you are." Days turned into weeks, and Emma found herself carrying the secret like a second heartbeat. Her interactions with James grew layered, every glance, every silence, potentially meaningful. She caught herself smiling at small gestures, then chastised herself for assuming too much. Meanwhile, she began noticing details in town. A young man at the post office scribbling on envelopes, a woman at the cafe folding papers delicately. Everyone became a suspect, though her heart stubbornly circled back to James. She wondered if love made detectives of us all, searching for proof of what we hope is true. One rainy afternoon, Emma visited her sister, Clara. Over tea, Emma confessed, not the letter's content, but its existence. Clara leaned in, intrigued. Sounds romantic, or dangerous. Depends who wrote it. Emma frowned. Dangerous. Clara shrugged. Secrets can be. What if it's from someone obsessed? Someone watching you? The thought chilled Emma. She had been so focused on love that she hadn't considered unease. Clara urged caution. That night, Emma slept with the letter locked in her desk drawer, a protective barrier between her and the unknown. The town library became her next destination. Emma combed through old yearbooks, letters donated to archives, anything that might match the handwriting. Hours passed, but no definitive match appeared. As she packed her things, the librarian remarked, "You've been quite the sleuth lately." Emma forced a laugh, cheeks burning. On her walk home, she realized how entangled she had become in the puzzle. It wasn't just about discovering who wrote it anymore. It was about what she would do once she knew. Autumn leaves began to scatter across streets when James surprised Emma with a bouquet of marigolds. "They reminded me of you," he said simply. Her heart skipped. She wanted to confront him then, thrust the letter at him, demand answers. But instead, she accepted the flowers, their bright orange glow warming her chest. As they walked together afterward, laughter spilling easily, Emma thought, if he did write the letter, maybe he's waiting for me to be ready to hear the truth aloud. Yet readiness still felt far away. The day after her discovery, Elena sat in the university cafe with the letter tucked neatly inside a slim notebook. Every time she glanced at it, her chest tightened with the weight of unspoken truths. The bustling clatter of cups and chatter around her faded into background noise as she replayed Daniel's words. He hadn't simply admired her. He had bared his heart in fragile ink. Elena wondered if he'd ever intended for her to find it. Perhaps the letter was both a confession and a gamble, a risk that fate had now delivered into her trembling hands. She turned her thoughts inward, recalling every fleeting glance Daniel had sent her way. Had there been warmth lingering in his eyes that she had dismissed as courtesy? Had his laughter held a secret tenderness she never recognized? Elena felt a rush of embarrassment at her own obliviousness. Suddenly, the past year of casual exchanges and comfortable silences shifted, painted with a hue she had never noticed. Every memory felt altered, reframed by the weight of unspoken affection, and she could not help but see him differently now, as if he had been wearing his heart in plain sight all along. That evening, Elena returned to her small apartment, where the quiet pressed heavily around her. She laid the letter on the table beside her journal. The confession called out like a living thing, demanding a response. She picked up her pen, stared at the blank page, and felt a swirl of confusion. Should she mirror his bravery and reveal her own thoughts, or would silence be safer? Her heart urged her to reply, to write something equally vulnerable, but her hand hesitated. Fear stood like a wall, whispering. Once written, there would be no retreat. In her restless dreams that night, Elena saw the ink on Daniel's letter blur and rearrange itself into endless questions. Do you feel the same? Will you run? Will you answer? She woke with her pulse racing, the questions echoing louder than her alarm. As sunlight filtered through her curtains, Elena realized that inaction might wound them both more deeply than honesty ever could. Love letters, she thought, demanded an answer, even if the answer was not the one expected. To let his words float unanswered would be to silence something sacred. And so, she resolved to write. Her hand trembled as she began. Daniel, she wrote, pausing at the name. It looked softer, more vulnerable in her own script. Words trickled slowly, uncertain at first, but soon the ink flowed in steady rivers. She described the surprise, the warmth, the confusion, and the way his letter had changed her perspective. She didn't claim love in return, not yet. Instead, she admitted to curiosity, to possibility, to a door she hadn't known was open until now. "If your words are truth," she concluded, "then allow me the chance to step closer, to see where this leads." Elena folded the letter carefully, slipped it into an envelope, and tucked it inside the same book where she had found his. Yet when she saw Daniel at the library later that afternoon, she froze. He sat at a corner table, absorbed in a stack of research articles, his brow furrowed. She hesitated, letter in hand, debating whether to slip it between his papers or to hand it to him directly. Courage surged, faltered, surged again. At last, she turned away, slipping the envelope back into her bag, her pulse thundering at the near confession. The next few days passed in a restless blur. Elena kept the letter close, hidden in her purse like a secret heartbeat. Each time she crossed paths with Daniel, at lectures, in hallways, in the cafeteria, she rehearsed what she might say, how she might hand it over. But the right moment never seemed to appear. Her silence grew heavier, until it felt like a second shadow trailing her. She began to wonder whether she was protecting herself or simply prolonging the inevitable truth that words could no longer be contained. One rainy evening, fate intervened. The campus power flickered and failed, plunging the library into darkness. Students murmured, phones lit up in glowing rectangles. Elena, caught near the history section, nearly collided with someone turning the corner. Daniel. Their startled laughter broke the tension, and in the dim glow of his phone flashlight, his expression softened. "Guess the universe wants us to take a break," he joked. In that moment, with thunder rolling outside and silence pressing within, Elena felt the weight of her unsent letter, and courage surged once again. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos of her heart. He looked at her expectantly, and before she could second-guess herself, she pulled the envelope from her bag. The air between them seemed to still as she extended it. His eyes widened, not in confusion but recognition, as though he understood instantly what it contained. Slowly, almost reverently, he accepted it. Their fingers brushed briefly in the handoff, a fleeting touch that felt charged, like static in the storm-heavy air. For the first time, Elena exhaled without the burden of hesitation. That night, Elena lay awake listening to the rain batter her window, replaying the moment. Relief mingled with dread. Would he read it tonight? Would he respond? Or would he remain silent, letting the truth linger in limbo? She turned the questions over endlessly, wishing she could rewind and peek into his thoughts as he unfolded her letter. But the uncertainty, she realized, was part of the risk. She had chosen to speak, and now all she could do was wait for his answer, or his silence. Days passed with no response, and Elena's courage began to unravel. Each time she spotted Daniel across campus, her pulse spiked, but he offered no hint of acknowledgement. He greeted her as usual, polite, warm, yet with no mention of the letter. Was his silence deliberate, a kindness meant to protect them both? Or had he simply not known what to say? Elena felt the sting of regret creeping in. Perhaps her honesty had unsettled a fragile balance they once shared. The unanswered space between them grew heavier with each passing hour. On the fourth day, Daniel approached her outside the lecture hall. His expression carried a nervous determination. "Can we talk?" he asked, and Elena's breath caught. They walked together to a quiet bench beneath an oak tree. He sat, unfolded a slip of paper, and handed it to her. Unlike her letter, it was brief. "I didn't know if you'd ever read mine," it began. "I feared silence. But your words, they're more than I hoped for. I don't want to rush this. I only want honesty between us." His signature trembled at the bottom. Relief and warmth swept through her as she read. Their letters had become bridges, fragile yet strong, spanning the gulf of unspoken feelings. She looked up at him, eyes shining, and whispered, "So we take this one step at a time?" He smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes. Exactly. It was not the grand, sweeping declaration of romance Elena had once imagined, but something gentler, more real. A commitment to honesty, to shared vulnerability, to the slow unfolding of something new. From that day forward, Elena and Daniel's friendship carried a different current. Their conversations stretched longer, filled with laughter and quiet admissions. They exchanged small notes, sometimes left in books, sometimes slipped beneath coffee cups. The notes weren't always romantic. Sometimes they were witty observations, sometimes fragments of poems, sometimes confessions of the day's anxieties. Yet each one deepened the tapestry of trust between them. The letters became their secret ritual, a language only they spoke, weaving intimacy into the ordinary. Elena marveled at how something as simple as ink and paper had transformed her world. The campus paths felt brighter, conversations warmer, even rainy days softer. Yet beneath the joy, a flicker of fear remained. What if their words one day faltered? What if honesty turned painful? But she pushed the doubts aside, choosing instead to live in the courage of each moment. The lesson of the love letter was clear. Silence had once hidden possibility, but words had opened doors. One evening, while studying together in the quiet hum of the library, Daniel slipped her a folded note. Inside, written in his familiar script, were just 6 words. "I'm glad you found my letter." Elena looked up, their eyes meeting across the table. She smiled softly, pressing the note to her heart. The confession that once lay hidden had now become the seed of something enduring. It was no longer about secrecy, but about shared discovery, about 2 hearts daring to write their truths into existence. Their story became less about dramatic revelations and more about the everyday courage of being seen. They walked together through campus gardens, swapped books filled with marginal notes, and built a rhythm of small, consistent honesty. Elena realized that love didn't always roar. It often whispered, steady and patient. The confession in the letter was no longer just Daniel's. It had become hers too, an ongoing dialogue of vulnerability and hope. Months later, when autumn leaves blazed across the trees, Daniel handed her another letter, this one sealed with care. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was not just a confession but a promise. "Wherever this leads," he wrote, "I want us to keep writing, to keep speaking, to never return to silence." Elena's eyes blurred with tears. She looked at him, unable to speak, and simply nodded. The love they had built was not perfect, but it was honest, and that was enough. The letter she had once discovered by accident had reshaped her life. It had revealed hidden truths, forced choices, and built courage she never knew she had. Elena often wondered what would have happened if she had ignored it, if she had let fear dictate her silence. But love, she now knew, was born not only in chance discoveries but in the decisions made afterward, the choice to read, to respond, to risk, and to hope. Years later, Elena would keep the first letter, the confession hidden in a love letter, tucked safely in a wooden box with all the others they had exchanged. She would sometimes unfold them, trace the familiar handwriting, and smile at the journey ink had carried them on. Their story was not about a single confession but about the courage to answer it, again and again, in countless ways. The love letter had not just been a confession. It had been the beginning of a lifelong conversation.